I call the big and heavy vehicles in my near-to-far mobility system regional cars, as they get us across our larger cities and regions every day. But I also call them far cars, because they are big and fast vehicles that can take us far. While our multitude of highway-capable automobiles have profoundly improved life in our country, for the most part, since the Model T introduction, but too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, just like many medicines that heal us. If you take too much or overdose, it can kill you. Decades ago, it made more sense for us to travel around our cities with extra seats and more storage capacity in our cars than we needed every day, as this was before the internet and before we could optimize our daily travel around a smaller vehicle and get a larger shared car only for that extreme trip. Yes, priority number one is for us to move to a carbon-free transportation as soon as possible. Unfortunately, few of us realize that every gallon of gasoline that we put into our gasoline-powered car weighs 6 pounds in liquid form. And then once it's burned in our engine, it comes out of our tailpipe invisible to our eyes, but with 20 pounds of CO2 along with the other pollutants. That's right. All of us driving a gas car today convert each gallon of gasoline weighing 6 pounds into 20 pounds of CO2, which tragically goes up to our atmosphere, where it will stay for 300 to 1,000 years. While we urgently have to stop burning gasoline to get around, let me be clear, the far car is not the big answer nor the best way to solve our eco-mobility challenges. For starters, we can see converting all of our far cars to clean power is not a comprehensive answer, and it will do nothing to alleviate worsening traffic congestion in our major urban areas. If we could magically make all of our far cars clean powered tomorrow morning, our cars in our traffic jams across the country would still be struggling to move. Most of our cars are simply too big. We now live in a new access age, where half of our trips are 3 miles or less. Do we really need to take a vehicle composed of around 25,000 parts to go a few miles? We can see the problem most clearly when we look at our automobiles without the body. Since 90% of Americans go to work with only one person in their automobile, most of which have 4 to 5 seats, we can now see how inefficient this is. This condition not only costs our pocketbooks and the environment, it also makes our cities worse places to live. And speaking about our pocketbooks, the average American household that owns 2 automobiles now pays over $50 every day of the year for them. This figure comes from AAA, which covers the cost to own and maintain our cars on average, but includes depreciation of them. Would your car seem more expensive if the car dealer came to your house every evening of the year to collect $50 from you? Then consider that they are parked on average around 97% of the time, not being used. Then would you think you're paying too much for transportation in our new digital age? Yes, we have a far car disease or a far car illness, whatever you want to call it, here in the United States. We can also see far too much of the land in our cities is being used just to park our far cars when we're not using them. Here is Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is like many of our thin cities, and all of the light areas are the buildings and the streets. And all of the orange colored sections you see are for parking our big far cars. All of this parking space is not for wonderful cafes, city parks, or affordable housing. No, that's just where we store our outdated, oversized far cars. And the unfortunate reality of our dependency on far cars has only gotten worse in the past 40 years, as they just keep getting bigger. Consider the average person in the United States weighs 180 pounds. 40 years ago, the average car weighed 3,200 pounds. Now, 4 decades later, after our world has been transformed by digital technologies, the average car now weighs 4,300 pounds. That's 1,100 pounds heavier. We absolutely cannot continue on this path. On the other side of the green transportation coin, we can see all major thin city regions of the United States working to reduce automobile use and the need to own one. There are many good people working to provide better public transit, better ways to walk and bike, and use other new mobility options. So what is the problem with this better approach? There are not enough car owners switching to these comprehensive options fast enough to meet the challenge. Ultimately, the best local vehicle for a short trip on a nice day is a pedal bike. But it's very troubling that so few people ride their bikes in our thin cities. Sadly, it's less than 1%. Studies show that people that ride their bikes to work every day have a 55% lower chance of getting heart disease and a 50% lower chance of getting cancer, yet less than 1% do it. Some of the reason for this very low level of bike ridership has to do with people needing to take longer trips or not having that much time for the trip, but also many people feel they cannot ride a bike safely today and risk getting killed by a driver in a big fast car. Unfortunately, the alternative transportation thin cities advocate for doesn't offer people door-to-door mobility. No matter how many transit and bicycle advocates post this image of the space savings from switching from automobiles to bikes or taking the bus, the reality is the car takes the user directly from where they are to where they want to go, door to door. While a multitude of cars are far from efficient and cost way too much in my opinion, they remain more convenient than the alternatives presented to date. Any one of us can open the maps on our smartphone and compare the travel time across our thin city, either by automobile or taking public transit, and we will see in many cases public transit can take 3 times or longer if it even goes where we want to go. A recent study in a major thin city area of the United States showed a person owning an automobile could access 8 times more jobs than someone using public transit. This is very sad. Therefore, most of us, even with low incomes, are essentially forced to own a car to just survive. And our cars have just kept getting larger and more costly. We find ourselves with a major social justice issue now. But I should mention, in recent years, we have seen more on-demand new mobility options become available to us, which is great. These new services include car sharing, which is renting a highway-capable car by the minute, hour, or longer. We now have bike share, electric bike share, and shared e-scooters in many of our thick city locations today. And many of us have used Uber to get a ride when we need. But altogether, these new mobility services have not enabled many of us living in thin city to eliminate a household automobile. Owning or leasing an automobile makes it your proprietary vehicle, meaning it's always yours and usually parked near where you are at all times. To switch to a system or network of mobility services is an entirely new model of how we get around. It's no longer about the performance of your automobile, but about the performance of the new mobility system. It's therefore not a surprise that car sharing has been slow to see much use in our thin cities, as few people will walk a long way just to rent a car for an hour or so. And the car sharing company can't afford to have more shared cars close by if most own a car and few use the service. It's a chicken and egg problem. We simply can't expect many people to switch to a low-performing new mobility network of services. In this multimodal mobility or multimobility future, the consumer will ultimately become more like Tarzan, swinging from vine to get across their city. Maybe I should call Tarzan Carzan, as we will be doing a lot of swinging between vehicles. But regardless of the name, Tarzan can only swing across a jungle if there are enough vines to do so. And unfortunately today, most of us don't have them. We have simply not gotten enough traction in many of our thin cities moving beyond car dependency to date. There is a third way to approach green transportation, by reducing the size of the cars we use for our daily local trips and by using different mobility options for our more extreme trips that are more rare. This enables people to enjoy what they like about their cars, but for far less cost to their pocketbook and to the environment. Ba, ba, boom, ba, ba, boom, ba, 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 boom, ba, ba, boom, ba, ba. I'm pleased many people are already figuring this out, that they can right-size their local mobility and have fun by riding an electric bike today. In the United States, e-bike sales are up over 500% in the last 10 years. But unfortunately, when the weather gets cold, rains or snows, many people leave the e-bike in the garage and go back to driving that big far car to get around. But why not offer a local car which is super efficient and fun like the e-bike, but can be enjoyable mobility for all climates and seasons? Wouldn't it be great to be using very small electric cars that have tiny battery packs and that will reduce the need for mining all these battery minerals from around the world with these different governments, some which are very questionable? As I've mentioned, my interest is in seeing as many households in thin-city United States eliminate a second car in exchange for a local car and various mobility options to go far when needed. I expect our communities will be far better places to live, with many of our homes becoming one far car households and having a second car replaced with local vehicles and better mobility options. This will work best for a household where one of the adults in the house either works from home or commutes to a consistent work site every week. We can expect to see households retain one far car and still be able to get to all the places they need to go like before. One adult may choose to use the far car every day while another mainly uses a local car more often. The local car will be enjoyable to drive to one's nearby destinations, to the supermarket, or to a cafe to meet a friend, or the gym, the library, or taking a child to school or picking them up. When the local car user has the rare need to travel further across their city or region, I expect they will first look to take the household far car for the trip. But if it's not available, then they will rent a far car from the car sharing service nearby or use public transit or another option to make the longer trip. I am describing bimodal mobility, using two modes to complete a trip. I'm pleased many cities are now supporting shared micromobility to make public transit more effective for people. Local vehicles make it much faster to reach a transit station or reach one's destination on the other end of the trip than can be done by walking. I expect we're going to see really cool vans from a company like Uber one day, where one can ride a small local vehicle to a mobility hub and board the van and also bring their small electric vehicle with them, making their transit vehicle more like a car ferry, but for tiny vehicles. This makes for a much more efficient trip than any electric automobile can offer. But the main solution I am proposing involves us using far more very small cars that are comfortable in all weather and seasons. Early in my career, I designed the first neighborhood electric vehicle, or NEV, and started a company to manufacture my design. My vehicle is not much different than a souped-up golf cart. My NEV has become the market leader and got the United States government to create a new vehicle category based on it called the low-speed vehicle, which nearly all states in the country have now adopted into law. My company is now owned by others, and the good news is there are many other quality local cars being introduced in the United States and around the world today. One exciting new NEV headed to the United States is the Eli Zero, a modern NEV with many design features of an automobile. In Europe, there's a super compact and cool Biro. It's possible that NEVs like this could be sold in the United States up ahead. There are numerous other NEV-type vehicles being sold in Europe, but they're called quadricycles, including the very cute Microlino with a novel front door for getting in and out of the tiny car. There are also small enclosed three-wheelers coming to market, A new company in Nimbus is developing a very cool version that leans into corners. Many that have bought their own NEVs in the United States have increased their top speed from 25 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour, making the vehicle far more useful for them. And we know NEVs will cost less money to purchase in the future when many more are sold, allowing the NEV to benefit from economies of scale. There are also more complexities to develop the right condition for NEVs and local cars to find wide acceptance in the marketplace than the electric bike has faced, which often travels in established bike lanes. But with 93% of American households owning a car, why not reduce the size of some of our cars in our new digital age and see us move to a far more efficient and environmentally friendly future?